What is up? What is good? How are y'all doing? Episode 330 of The Past is here. I am your host with the most, BT. Gonna do something a little unorthodox, but actually intended to be that way. There will be no angel number. I am semi behind on recording, and I'm going to talk about two main topics, which is the update as to what's going on, because y'all know, as I like to do, I'm pretty good with being very transparent on this podcast. That has kind of been the staple of what has made the podcast be what it is and become what I've known it to be as my baby. So let's just go ahead and unpack it and call it what it is. First and foremost, I am genuinely gonna own up to the fact that I have not recorded a show in nearly a month. And I don't like that. I feel bad about it, but I also know I've been very emphatic on the phrase of the term health over wealth. So a lot of things that I haven't been doing is because I don't want to sit in front of the microphone, quote unquote, force a show and it not be of good content or good audio quality for the listener. Because at the end of the day, no one wants to come to a show that doesn't give off the proper energy or the proper space of being just that, a good space or a good place to record or upload episodes. So that's number one. Number two, and I didn't know how I was going to deal with this or what would happen, but this is, I guess, episode 330 part 2, even though part 1 is gone, and I'll explain what I mean by that. Things happen and you learn lessons without realizing that you were meant to learn the lesson. And in this case, it was no exception. Many of you may or may not know my setup or how I do things with my recording, but that's nothing like of major knowledge if you do or don't know it. But I normally store my episodes on a portable device. Well, the last episode that I recorded, I was able to edit the show, be in the process of getting ready to upload said show, and somehow said show and said image for that episode did not want to play nicely. So I tried to go through everything possible to see if I could recover this information, see what I could find, see if there was a way to get it back or whatever the case may be. Well, it turns out that the audio of all of my episodes, all of my intros, all of my podcasts every day in August and April, my Richmond Podcast Network intro, I'm gonna have to do some digging to see where I can find that again. To say what I was saying, I'm kind of starting back at square one, which in hindsight isn't the end of the world. In its initial moment, it was, only because I was really trying to not only get my content and or audio back, but I was also trying to make sure that I could recover what I had. Luckily, I can go back and get my shows from where my host is, which those who may or may not know, and if you haven't listened to any of the shows before, it's on Buzzsprout. So getting my audio back won't be hard. Getting my images back won't be hard. Those things I can work on and get that done with no big issue or no big hang up. The problem and or conflict comes in of having to take time and cut each part and making sure I put everything back in folders. And I guess is to say what I was saying, tidying it up and cleaning up that portion of the content, which again shouldn't be anything too time consuming, but it's just tedious of having to do it. And a lot of people who don't do podcasts or don't record podcasts are probably listening to all of this like, Brian, what are you talking about? But let's put it this way. I'll explain it in layman's terms, which is something that I'm learning to work on or have been put in a position to work harder on. When you save things on file in places or locations, it should be what it is when you come back to that file. When I went back to look for these specific files or programs, everything got altered. When I say everything got altered, instead of there are two main folders that I have. One for my podcast, one for my images. The podcast and the images folder turned into executable files. So I could not access them. I could not get to them. I could not change them. I don't know if a virus got on that flash drive. I don't know if it was a certain way that the device, that the actual drive may have been pulled out and didn't like how it was done. The accessory I used to connect that flash drive to my computer, I've gotten rid of. And the other flash drive, oddly enough, still works, that I keep all of my design work on. So that's a blessing beyond none. Because that includes my contracts, my websites, well, not my contracts, my logos, any prospective ideas or notes from designing, like all of that's on that one. So pertinent information, to say the least. But all of the stuff for my podcast, I'm somewhat starting at square one, but not necessarily starting at square one. So it's a little different, but it's not the end of the world. The only part of it that felt like the end of the world, or the only part of it that felt more frustrating than anything, was just the simple fact that the latest episode that I was trying to upload, I can't get back. And so that affected me, and it hurt me a little bit, but it didn't cause me to have like a meltdown to the point where I was like, you know what, I can't do this. I'm not going to record anymore. Let me just pod fade. I just needed to gather myself, figure out what I'm going to do, and where to carry the podcast. I'm indifferent about this, but I think I'm still kind of in my same space of how I want to record. Because also some other things have come up business wise and or platform wise that will help me to expand my scope a little bit more in what I'm doing. And I don't want to get too far ahead of myself with any of those things, because I need to do my part in making sure I get that done as well. So I will still, if any, to kind of break it all down. Yes, I'm still recording. Yes, I'm good. Yes, everything will still be running as a simple to clear point, well-oiled machine. Just there are going to be some minor tweaks and adjustments accordingly. I will be sticking to sports. I will be sticking to stuff. I will be keeping my tech flow within the show. There may be some mix-ups where I may have stuff consist of people who know sports or know basketball on a different level. We'll see. I'm still going to get some tidbits, tips, and tricks of people, picking folks' brain. I know in a couple weeks I plan to have someone on. Next week I plan to have a numerologist on, and we're going to unpack and have a good conversation. And I'm planning to get my friends back on. We haven't done a show together in a while. And we're going to talk about I guess it'll be our first experience of BlurredCon, as well as we may do an Armbands Anonymous. I don't know. We'll see. I'm not going to get too far ahead on those things, but it's something that I have looked at and or considered to become a thing. So I think I got everything, or have explained everything. It's a unique conversation to have, because I had to figure out, as strange as it might seem, how to grieve over losing those files. Because to some people it's like, well, I mean, it's just audio, you can get it back. And I'm like, yeah, but it's also the show that I had recorded was one that I was excited to have. And then I was trying to find a way to get shows, and I can still work that out, but I'm going to not push too far ahead of myself with that either on what I'm trying to do. But with all of that being said, I guess we can talk sports, and we can talk about what has been going on since I last recorded, because a lot has happened. The Clippers didn't clip. I know that's probably going to sound shocking to hear from me, but the Clippers just played against a better team. So let's reel back time a little bit, because I want to make sure I'm bringing everything up to speed on when I've last recorded and what has been going on. The Jazz were quote unquote upset by the Clippers. You could say that. Depends on who you ask. But the Clippers were just a better team. There was uncertainty and concerns about Kawhi's injury or his health. He didn't play a couple of games against the Jazz, I believe 1 or 2 games. And Paul George earned his respect for the playoffs. We, as friends in my sports group, have attested, and I'm even on board in saying we can officially stop, or we can officially end the PG slander of sorts, or playoff P, whatever you want to call it, playoff P, pandemic P, whatever. Paul George can play. The next conversation, which is an unfair conversation, is the elite players, or like all around can ball. Like PG can ball, we know that, but elite, a little early. Well, I ain't gonna say a little early, a little. If he's gonna get there, it's gonna take him really doing something unbearable, like, I don't know, win a championship. And if they had, I'll even go as far as saying if they had made a run to actually, if they had won the series against Phoenix, then I would say it. Damn, we really haven't recorded in a minute, because the finals, we're pretty much, the finals are set. So I'm gonna stick to the West, and then I'll get into the East. Phoenix looks great. Where Chris Paul goes is where the team goes. I don't know how else I can really word or term that. I like what they have in their three-headed monster that isn't really, they're stars, but they're stars in their own way. And here's what I mean by that. Chris Paul, say what you want, call him dirty, cheap shots, whatever. Chris Paul has been one of the most durable point guards we've seen in the NBA recently. And it's an interesting factor to look at now, because you look at Chris Paul and Deron Williams, who both came in the league at the same time, and D Will held his own, don't get me wrong, but I think we now can see Chris Paul beginning to separate himself from, like, he was in that space of separating himself from D Will, CP. Chris Paul was separating himself from D Will. Then you go to Devin Booker, which we're going to be bringing this up for years to come. He's going to be a player that we're really going to be keeping an eye on for the next 7 or 8 years, because his game has only elevated, even with him being a Sun throughout his career. Because that's always the question, like, okay, player goes through a rookie contract, they're with said team, are they going to stay and get the bag, or are they going to go elsewhere and try to, pull something together to win a championship? And he stayed through it all. He's, remained consistent with the Suns throughout, everything that they've done. Monty Williams being the coach that he is, and it's almost like a unique full circle of Monty Williams first getting a coaching gig and coaching the New Orleans Hornets, and oddly enough, Chris Paul playing for the New Orleans Hornets, things of that nature, and then fast forwarding to, now they're under the same, in the same team with Phoenix. And let's also not forget DeAndre Ayton. DeAndre Ayton needs to get his respect. The Suns, and I want to make sure, because I don't want to leave this out. The Suns did something that I did not expect. I'm going to just openly say it. The Nuggets possibly would be a different team, or would have been a different team with Jamal Murray playing. But you also have to think of it as the team has to play based on who they have. So they have who they have, and it's got to be worked through what you have. So with them having who they had, you had Jokic, who won the MVP, but Jokic is only one player. There are a lot of guys on Denver who did not show up. Jokic, there was a big, concern about him, the final foul that he got, or the ejection. I believe it was a flagrant and an ejection, I believe, for Game 4 against Phoenix. They got swept, which I don't think anybody saw coming. But it was, Jokic played his best basketball that he could in that, within that option or within the realm he had. So that led to the Clippers and the Suns. The story was Suns in 6, Suns in 6, Suns in 6. Suns won games 1 and 2. Clippers won game 3. Suns came back to win Suns win games 1 and 2. Clips win game 3. Suns win game 4. That puts them ahead 3-1. We're gonna go home, of course. Game 5, the Clippers played what was their best basketball. And mind you, they did all of this without Kawhi, as well as you add in Chris Paul misses game 1 due to COVID protocol. A lot of people go into, well, what about LeBron with his COVID protocol? And I'm like, y'all need to remember, we find ways to do it, but we got to stop with turning it to the LeBron scenario. Different players have different tutelage. Let's just call it what it is. Let's accept it for where it's at. But even with those factors, taking it all out of it, game 5, Paul George has the game of all games. I think he scored like 49 points, something like that. We go into game 6, still win or go home. And Phoenix hit the accelerator from jump ball and never looked back. It's still a fresh wound, but I'm hoping that Adam Silver is able to go back and really look at what Beverly did against Phoenix or against Chris Paul as far as the push. Because I believe he was ejected for the game. He sent this apology that I just think was poorly timed. And to add to it, they've not said whether he would be ejected, or not ejected, but if he's going to be suspended any games for the upcoming season. I think that's what should happen. But again, I'm not a GM, nor do I play one. Or I'm sorry, I'm not a NBA owner, nor do I play one. Like the commissioner, whatever. I'm not the commissioner of the league. It was just a cheap play. And I get it because Pat Bev wanted to get to the finals, just like any other player or any other team wants to get to the finals. I say this all the time, and I've shared this, and this is something that you have to remember with basketball. There are 300 to 400 players in the NBA, and a colleague of mine shared this with me, and this is a message. Ever since he said this, I understand it a lot clearer. Everyone's going for one championship. When that championship is won, 15 players get that championship, or they get a ring based on that championship. The other 200 plus players, give or take, do not sniff, scoff, dream of getting that championship. They go back to the workouts, they go through the routines, and they push to get another shot at a championship. The better team came out, and like I said, the Clippers didn't clip. It was more so the Suns were just playing top-notch basketball. And the greater good of it is they were able to be led by a guard who doesn't need the ball to get his points, but he's him having the ball gets players in the right position. There's not in looking at Phoenix, there's not a lot of standstill basketball. The conflict, this is going to be a tough one, but I guess we got to call it what it is. Clippers, when he was with the Clippers, Lob City, ball moved, he had shooters, pick your poison. Houston, between Houston and OKC, there was a lot of stand around basketball. Just calling it like you see it, just observing the landscape of where and how basketball moved. If Chris Paul had played in the series with James Harden, I think it would have been a different series with Houston, but we'll never know, so we can't go off of the what ifs and the shoulda, coulda, wouldas. And if Chris Paul wins a championship, I mean he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer regardless, but if he wins a championship, we have to put him in the conversation of like best point guards. I won't say the best point guard, but we have to put him in that space of he's a point guard that should get his proper respect. Nothing against him, but we gotta move Stockton out. Stockton is a great point guard, not Chris Paul though. he's not a Chris Paul. So that's all I got for the West. I think I paraphrased and kind of caught you all up on what is happening, where things stood with the Western Conference and us getting the Phoenix Suns as the Western Conference finalist to go into the finals, which starts, I believe, on Thursday, July the 8th. And by the way, and y'all probably can, you all probably will already notice this, there will be no show notes for this show. It's not really needed because this is kind of like this podcast, to say what I was saying, is a somewhat recap, and I'm actually wrong. Game 1 is going to be on Tuesday, so that means, which I kind of see what they're doing. I think they chose that because game 6 was Saturday by Milwaukee. If it went to game 7, it would have been Monday. Because I thought their initial date for the finals was on the 8th. But I could be wrong. Because I know they, can change things up on you, unbeknownst to the way of the game. But hey, it's the NBA. They can do what they want. Because I almost want to say I think they were looking to do it a little later, or like a few days later, in case, however far the games went. Because that would have been odd if it was like, okay, they played Saturday, game 7 would have been Monday, and it's no way Tuesday whoever would have won would have been able to travel or be prepared to play game 1. So I think they got changed, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. But anyway, moving over to the East. First things first. I'm not even gonna say we have to. You do what you think is in your best interest. I am not on board with making the statement or reference that James Harden is a playoff bust. We gotta stop. We've got to stop. It's not. No. It was a great series in watching the Bucks and the Nets go at it. It sucks that Kyrie was unable to play the last few games in that series. It sucks even more that Harden went out and played practically on one bad leg. Like, the worst thing you can do when you watch basketball is see someone play and you can tell they playing on or doing something and it's like you can see a flat tire. Poor analogy, which I'm not manifesting because I'm thinking about something internally, but yeah, you just don't want to do that. Fast forward couple steps in, and boom, you got Brooklyn and Milwaukee down to game 7. Kevin Durant's foot could have possibly been the key factor to the Nets going to the conference finals as to how close of a 3 that was and how close of a 3 versus a 2 that shot was over PJ Tucker. Because that's a shot. Everyone's tried that shot in their backyard and missed it at least 20 times. And he did it in game and made it with no problem. KD laid it all on the floor. Kyrie, you don't want to add harm to an injury that you just shouldn't be playing on. And I think this offseason is going to help them because they need those 3 guys at 100%. Or as close to 100%. Let me make sure I clear that up. So then you go and you have them playing against Atlanta, I got to remember because their matchup was still mind-blowing, personally. Let's see. So, I had to go back and really look at it. I was like, oh my God, they played who? Philly, it's so bad because I don't want to sound like this fan, but I'm going to say it as a fan of basketball and just a fan of just understanding the game and understanding it all from the outside. Joel Embiid couldn't do any more than what he did. And here it is, you have Ben Simmons who's scared to shoot. And it's a mind over matter thing, but it's also he's just not a good shooter. And this is the other part of this, because now that I'm really looking at it with the process and all that happened, because no one expected Embiid to come in and dominate the game like he did at all. If you did, hey, you can mark it on your bingo board. I didn't. Not going to even sit here and cap or BS that one whatsoever. Having said that, you already had Ben Simmons. You then drafted Markelle Fultz, who went through a mental shooting slump thing, whatever. Granted, he got to Orlando, and it's like, I think Orlando was his breakout. If he was healthy in Orlando, I don't think Vucevic gets traded. There we go. That's it. That's the tweet. We can all go home. But everything happened like it did. It put things into a different realm or into a different bubble. You're now forced to face the fact that where we are with this team. Trae Young and John Collins and Clint Capella are going to get the bag if they haven't already. Because I believe Trae is still in his rookie contract. Collins should be eligible for free agency soon. If not, they're going to go ahead and work to do an extension for him. And I'll explain why in a moment. Clint Capella was very key to the run. Because he stuck with Embiid as best as he could. Because we didn't see this Clint Capella in Houston. I'm sorry. As a fan of basketball and as a true seeker, we're gonna call it what it is. This person did not show up for the other games or the other action that was on scene. That's it. That's all I got. You then go on to the conference finals to play the Bucks. Game 1 was alarming for me because Atlanta was able to get a game in Milwaukee. Let me repeat that. Atlanta was able to get a game in Milwaukee, but not just any game, game 1. Then it became the battle of the injuries. And when I say the battle of the injuries, I refer to Trae Young having his injury and Giannis, I believe, had a mild sprain or an ankle sprain of some sort. So those guys offset each other, and now it's who's the better team and or who's the better players. Game 5 comes, Chris Middleton breaks out. Matter of fact, Game 5 was an eye-opener because you literally got to see that the Bucks have a good team. Brook Lopez had 33. I think everyone was shocked by that. And I'm like, Brook Lopez has only been in the league for like at least 10, 12 years. He's been playing this kind of basketball. You just don't see it a lot because the teams he's on, he's not the go-to guy. His one true solid season was in Brooklyn. When I say true solid season, referring to him making an All-Star appearance. But you also had guys like you had Drew Holiday, you had Chris Middleton, who's starting to earn his All-Star stripes as well as playing his basketball to the best of his ability. PJ Tucker, who is arguably the most solid veteran that's earning and letting it be known that I still belong in this league. Like Houston letting him go was probably the best thing for him, only because I don't think he handled the James Harden move very well. Just gonna call it what it is. And we gotta see it through and look at it for what it's worth. But with the injuries happening, Game 6, we got to see Cam Reddish show out, which I'm in shock and glad to see because I think he can play. Trae Young, same thing as James Harden. Trae Young played he was playing on that one-legged. I believe he was 0 for 7, 0 for 8 from 3. He could not get a 3 to fall. And I think the other part of it too is he relies on his legs for his shooting because for his size and for his shooting ability. Yes, his arms are beneficial in shooting, but he more so needs that lift to be able to get shots up. And this is probably where I'm looking at this podcast thing a little different, and I'll explain that in a moment as well. But I'm gonna go back to John Collins, and I'm gonna go back to what I just said, so I can make sure I get everything and don't leave any pages unturned. John Collins showed that he can do more than just dunk, and I think that is the one thing that we do need to realize. We can't just look at players and say, all they can do is da 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 da, and it's like, no, they're athletes and they're basketball players. They get a contract to do these talented things, and we go solely off of what we see, but we don't take time to really step back and look at, hey, this guy actually could be bringing something and could be a more productive factor than we realize. So let's try and do our best to give them their true props and their true worth and what they bring to the table. And it was another part because I don't want to lose it, and it's probably gone. But I do want to say that it was an eye-opening hit to look at them implementing a rule to finally get that. I almost want to call it like the offensive off-ball chicken wing call in the NBA. Because I talked about this on the show before, where players like are doing everything in their power to fight for contact. And it's like, all right, you don't need to force contact to get the call. If you want to call, just say, look, he hit me. Oh, I got fouled. Going through all this, let me hold him. And if I look like I'm bumping into him and can get the call, because I believe that call is going to come into place either next season or the season after. And I'm going to be very intrigued to see when players forget about that call and realize, like, you can't do that and I'm not calling it. And the other part of it, too, is refs can call games how they want to call games. We all know that. No one's that blind or that out of connection. Hang on a brief sec. Okay, so I got my thought back. I had to kind of do a quick, what did I say? What was going on? Okay. I'm probably going to go a little off course, but I'm going to reel it in a little bit because this is something that's helpful. And this is what I would like to see become a thing possibly with the platform. A lot of kids are talented with basketball, and I'm all for it. But what's missing is the core foundation of fundamentals. I'm going to be finding unique ways between having people on as well as talking about things in my personal experience and with others that I've seen happen and constantly occur in just getting better at the craft or at the game of basketball. Everyone has the ability to be good at basketball. Everyone can't make the NBA. End of discussion. And that's something that I think gets lost in the smoke and mirrors. And it's something that when athletes are trying to go out there and they're giving it their all and they're trying to, run up and down the court and you can make every play that you want. But the thing is, remember, and this, I don't know if I talked about this on the podcast, but this put it into perspective for me. Here it is. You have a player who is playing who has a AAU team that he's coaching or involved with. And he's telling these guys, he's an all-star. Bradley Beal said it just as openly and outright as could be. My goal in doing this is to keep my job. I ain't let none of y'all that's here right now take my job or take my money. And when I heard that, I was like, this is what it comes down to. And this is the drive and this is the fight that you should be going for with anything you're doing. Not just in basketball, but almost in life. Might be past the message there somewhere. This might be why I want to keep this stand up here. Sorry if you all that noise, my bad. But I want to share it. Think about it while it's fresh. My bad. All right. I got that note. Yeah, I found where that's going to be helpful. Can't let that go. I'm going to work something out, but I'm going to figure that out. Anywho, and I'm sitting here thinking because I have this board, but then I have another board. Anyway, my mind is all over the place. I'm making this statement or bringing this up. I say everything that I just said about shooting and just basic things is because Steph Curry, Ray Allen, Kyle Korver, JJ Redick, Trae Young. There are many other guys, but those guys who are good shooters, it's not just their form, it's not just their spacing and distancing, it's their footwork, and it's also the ability to come off the ball and or get off the ground in a good enough manner. Because some guys are gonna jump a good amount of height that if they come up just enough. It's the biggest challenge because when you come back down and you land, that's how a lot of guys, when they land awkwardly on their ankles or when you get ankle rolls, mallet sprains, things of that sort, that's the source of that. That's where that comes from, how that becomes a thing. So I'm sharing that, or I'm going over that with you all in discussion, just due to the simple fact that it's not as easy as it looks, and it goes back to my initial thought of where I was going with all this. Foundation of fundamentals. I'm not sitting here saying you need to be like a boring generic player. If you're athletically talented and can jump out the gym, I ain't mad at you. But if you can't hit a mid-range jumper, after all that dunking and all that highlight stuff, you gotta have the basic core components of your game. There's a reason why a lot of guys who get drafted don't see the NBA floor. Just something to think about. Just want to put that out there to those who have or do consider the NBA as an option or a route. Or if you're a parent and you have kids who are looking at the NBA, I really want you all to get this through to them and get them to understand this is not something to be taken lightly. But yeah, Game 6 was in Atlanta, and again, Giannis was out. Trae did play. Trae just did not. It was. Win or go home games are very tough, especially if you're trying to play at your best, but it doesn't show at your best. But yeah, Milwaukee was able to get that one, and then that's leading us to Game 1 on this Tuesday. So, how do I look at this series between Phoenix and Milwaukee? If my memory serves me correct, Phoenix will have home court, right? And I might be somewhat freestyling with that. Let me confirm, because I don't want to give, as you all know, I'm all about giving solid information, not bogus information. Yeah, because Phoenix is the second seed. Yeah, game 1 is going to be in Phoenix at 9 a.m. I say this every series, and I'm standing behind it, and no one can get me off of this perch. DeAndre Ayton is going to be the biggest factor. The difference this time is now DeAndre Ayton has Brook Lopez. I don't know how that's going to go because Ayton is a little more mobile than Brook Lopez. The difference is DeAndre Ayton can't shoot. Now, when I say shoot, I mean he doesn't have really anything outside of the paint. In paint, dropping a dime near the basket. He can give you the little small hook floaters, all that stuff. But a mid-range or stretch, he's not a stretch big. Brook Lopez is a weird stretch big because he's not really a stretch big, but he's not going to get benched for shooting a three. And then there's the $1 million question. Who checks Giannis? Because it's almost like it's a counter argument or a counter conversation. We'll offset the obvious. Chris Paul and Drew are going to check each other. Ayton and Brook Lopez are kind of going to be going at it. PJ Tucker and Devin Booker, I'm going to really look forward to that because I think Booker is going to PJ Tucker is going to give Devin Booker fits, but in a good way. And when I say in a good way, I mean it as he's going to make him uncomfortable enough to have to play out of his element, but he's got to put his best foot forward. Middleton may check Booker some because they're both two guards. And I think, I'm trying to remember the other kid's name. He went to Villanova. You also have him too. I think Middleton may play him from time to time. But I'm just in my head, I'm trying to see who's going to check Giannis. But I'm also thinking about the fact that Giannis has to reduce his charges, or as I've called it, the bull in the China shop mentality. Because if he doesn't, it's going to be a quick series. And that's just where I'm at about it. I'm going to say, if I'm taking this on a whim, Phoenix in 6. Don't quote me on that. I'll go ahead and let y'all know you have some time because, like I said, next week, actually for the next few weeks, I won't be talking sports. It'll be a lot of stuff. So hey, you live, you learn, no biggie. But yeah, I want to get that out on the table and discuss that while I had it fresh. Music wise, Her dropped a new album, amazing album. Nas has a new single that I got to listen to. Wale has a song with Chris Brown. Checked it out. It's a good song. They're bringing out singles for a Netflix documentary, but it's not being compiled as an album on Spotify. Now, Apple users, I will give credit where it's due. If it's set up as an actual playlist, I'm rocking with it. And what could happen too, because I also have to remember, you have to sometimes give artists time, you have to give platforms time, because someone will see all of the songs and compile a playlist based on the songs, which I'm okay with that too. It's with Robert Glasper, I believe Janelle Monáe's on one of the songs, Her's on the song. There are quite a few artists, but I've listened to a few of those singles and that's been pretty cool. Tyler the Creator has a new album. Oh my gosh, it is so amazing. I'm sold on the album. I've played that. That's been a helpful wind down, but good flow. It's a good flowing album, which is always key when you're listening to different albums. So that's what I'm at with the AirPod Escape, a music sesh. Like I said, stuff we talked about E3, but I don't remember. It was so many things that happened. So yeah. I'm just going to leave that at that. The message today, as we finish up the first half of 2021, and we ease into the second half, and most importantly, the third quarter of this year, find and maintain your drive. Whatever that thing is that's driving you to do better, use it and don't minimize it. Everyone's drive for what they're trying to do is not the same. End of discussion. You can argue it, you can battle it, you can make it whatever you want to make it sound like. But everyone doesn't have the same drive for the same things. Some people put a little bit more effort behind it, and they know they're doing it because they want to get whatever that said thing is done and off their list. Others, it's I'll get to it when I can. And getting to things when you can might be too late. So just keep that in mind when you're working on your drive. I'm going to give this as a quick story and we'll wrap up. As many of you have heard me talk about or mention, which kind of put a delay on the podcast at the time, now that I think about it, I went back to school to do network and cybersecurity. And my first term back, I kind of had a culture shock a little bit, because here I was, starting back in school, trying to quote unquote get my feet wet, trying to learn school again, trying to really perfect this craft of just school. And my bad, I'm doing like 10 things that I have no business doing, and I'm probably not going to get. All right, I got it. And here I am, my first term back, and I get 2 decent classes, but I had forgotten the format and or style of IPC. And forgive me, I'll mark it because I don't think I need to mention school's name. But I'm attending said school, and in the process, like my first term, I'm taking a networking class and I'm taking a JavaScript class. Or introduction to Java, something like that. It wasn't JavaScript, it was just intro to Java. Which I kind of wish I kept, retain the information from that, because it was a lot of stuff that you learn or gather that can be very resourceful in the long haul, but another story, another time. I'm in class for networking, and it's a 5-week course. When I tell you week 2, I was behind the 8 ball. It was not a joking matter. It was no laughing matter. I was able to get through the class and I got a C, but it should not have been a C. I should have had at least a B or A. Bluntly an A. But I didn't give the effort to it because it was like I almost had to be retrained and getting back into the school flow again. And I was like, fam, it's not that hard, but it's hard if you're not conditioning yourself to prepare for what you're about to get into. And I didn't. And I paid for it. So I made it my goal after that term to not get behind. Because the worst thing you can do is be on week 3 or week 4 and you're still working on week 2 assignments. Because and that's something that, going back to your driver, what's key. If your drive ain't going nowhere and you ain't really all that interested in something, time's still moving. Time moving. You can sit there and be like this and be on your Kenny G or your Sade or your chill vibe, but time moving and time waiting. Time is like, what we doing? What's our plan? What's our goal? What we working on? How we gonna get there? And if you don't have those things thought out as you're doing it, you're hit. And that's something that I'm sharing as a message to pass along to you all. But as always, I'm sharing it to pass it to myself, because my drive has to pick up. If it doesn't, then we're in a heap of trouble. So I just wanted to address that or share that with you all today, and making it a big thing to really simplify the process by all means. So that's what I got for y'all. I hope everyone like really gets through whatever it is that they're trying to get through, and help those who are trying to get through things as well. And be patient with people. Be patient with people, but most of all, be patient with yourself. Like, don't feel like you have to reach this thing, and if you don't reach it, the world is coming to an end. Like, it's okay. And that's the part that is key to remember and remind yourself. So that's all I got. I hope y'all have an amazing week. Like I said, happy third quarter. Happy third quarter, happy second half. And let's rock this year out like nobody's business. All right. Y'all take it easy.